So we're going to talk to you a little bit. I gave them your biography. So, did filmmaking evolve, or was it a conscious choice?
Um, I think it kind of evolved from a few things. I guess when I was in elementary school, I found this little webcam in my dad's office, and I had always been kind of fascinated with computers. I think when I was younger, I had assumed I would be some kind of electrical engineer or something, because that's what my dad was. And so I was always kind of tinkering with technology. And I started just throwing stuff together in Windows Movie Maker for fun. And I guess from there I decided to think, oh, I could do this for school projects. And so I guess just as I started to do it more and more, it became more of something I enjoyed. And so I guess since it evolved from my initial interest in just computers, and then in middle school I think it became film, and it just stayed that way from then on.
And you went to Centennial High School, and they have a video program. Um,
hmm
Tell us a little bit about your experience at Centennial.
so at Centennial, the first year we had a teacher whose name was Dr. Futrell, and I loved Dr. Futrell. I would stay. There were a lot of people at Centennial who took the class because they thought it would be just an easy kind of throwaway class. They didn't really care anything about making movies. So the few of us who actually did have kind of a strong interest in film and wanted to do that for forever, I think we kind of were separate from the rest of the class. They would kind of do their projects. And then those of us who were really interested would stay after school. And I remember Dr. Futrell, his wife would pick him up after work every day. So he would be at the school until 6 or 7 at night. And me and a couple other people would just go and hang out in in the BP part of the school, and in his office, and just talk to him and pick his brain. And I just loved to talk about what we were working on, and so that was really great. I feel like probably almost every day my freshman year I stayed after school and just talked to him. He's the one who convinced me to get the camera that I ended up getting and using all throughout high school for commercial work and whatnot. And
What camera was that?
he just gave a lot of. Sorry, what was that?
What kind of camera was that by chance?
That's a Panasonic AF100.
Okay.
And yeah, so he even got me like hooked up with Showcase, which is a camera store in Atlanta, to give me a discount on it. So that was cool. And so he just gave a lot of really practical advice from his long career in the industry, and it was just really great to hear that. And the other people who would hang out there after school, I still work with them to this day. I just did a project with one that the people had hired me on as director, and this other guy was a senior when I was a freshman, and so I brought him on as the DP. One of the other people I know, I regularly bring on as like a sound engineer if I'm working on something. So those connections were really valuable. And then he left after my freshman year. We had someone new come in, and the program just kind of lost structure. And so those next 2 years is kind of a little bit of a struggle to get through it. We were trying to throw together a new show, but we couldn't really handle it. No one at the school watched it. We would put it on Vimeo, but maybe one person at the school would watch it. So you really lost your motivation to make the show. And so I ended up dropping out after I completed the pathway. So I didn't do the fourth year of PvP.
Okay. And you got involved with the student Emmys. I guess as a senior, that's when I got you involved.
Right.
Um, Tell us, what did you win a student Emmy award for? Or I believe you won two that year.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so I didn't even know the student Emmys existed up until my senior year, when someone, I think, and it wasn't related to PvP, someone just happened to mention to me, oh, they have these high school Emmy awards.
That was me, actually.
Oh, that was you? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So you mentioned it to me, and I ended up submitting the film that I had made when I grow up, and I didn't make that for school or anything. It was actually for my Chapman application. I didn't know that we had to create a new video to send along with our Chapman application. I thought it was just like the other film schools where they just say, give us a video that you've made. but Chapman had a prompt. So I found out about 5 days before it was due that I had to make a film. So I cast my brother real quick, and we kind of threw that together. And then I was like, okay, what do I do with this? So I submitted it to the Emmys for consideration for Best Director and Best Fiction Film. And so those are the awards it won. And yeah, that was really interesting to go see. I didn't even know they were a thing until that year.
Cool. So we're gonna kind of switch gears about film schools. What were you looking for in a film school?
Um, that's such a hard question because I think people often try to figure out what the value of film school is because some people say there's no point to it because you can't teach art or you're going to learn more on your first day on set than you will in film school, and those are true. Um, I think film school, I was mostly looking for something that I could come into with the skills that I already had, along with the things I wanted to know, knowing what things I could be better at and what things I feel like I was already at a good level at, and just really try to craft those with the best people working in the industry as professors to kind of help out. And so USC caught my attention because their class sizes are really small. They accept 50 film students a year. And they really focus it less on, we're going to teach this wide uh, amount of curriculum to all the students, and it's more of you are in small sections with different professors. So the film class that I'm taking right now, or the main one I'm taking, which is a directing class, is only 15 students, and you get really individualized attention. So each week, if you bring in a script or if you bring in a film for class, you'll spend upwards of 30 minutes just talking about your film with the class. So that kind of thing really caught my eye. And also just something that's really connected to the industry. So, for example, my two top choices for Chapman and USC. Chapman is in Anaheim, California, if I'm correct, which is about an hour, 15 minutes from here. And USC is right in the center of LA. So USC had all these connections to the industry and to internships at Warner Brothers, Fox, Universal, all the big players. And Chapman is closer to. I don't know if you can hear me. It says
I can hear you. I can hear you fine. We're good.
Hey, still there?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So it was, I guess, a matter of which I thought would be able to, I guess, I could kind of get my foot in the door places, because I think that's a huge thing about film school is, as soon as you exit film school, you're kind of thrown into this industry that's so hard to get your foot in the door places. So film school being able to help you with that, I thought was, a major pro towards whatever film school could. And USC was the one that I thought was the best at that. The other thing about USC that I think is different than the other film schools is, you come in here and you hear, lists rank it as like the #1 film school and all that. So you don't really know what kind of people you're going to expect when you get here. And when I got here, I noticed that there are people who are very technically talented. And there are people who aren't so technically talented, and there are people who have been doing this for their whole lives, and people who just started it 2 years ago. Filmmaking, I mean. So the one thing that you do notice throughout every person, the continuous thread, is that everyone here really knows, I guess, what makes a good story. Every person here is really focused on storytelling rather than technical things. So there are people here who can't use a camera at all. They don't know what exposure is. It's very simple things. They can't keep a shot in focus, but that's okay because we're gonna learn that here at USC. That's how do you focus a camera? That's something we're learning this year as sophomores. But we've had a lot of opportunities to last year just practice crafting stories and telling stories, and it's amazing the kind of stories that these people who just started making films like a year ago are telling. So I think that's something super unique about USC is when they're finding applicants, they don't look for people to make the best films, but for people who they can tell really have a knack for storytelling.
Well, that was what I was going to ask next. Is um, what are the schools looking for? What are these film schools looking for when they're looking at a ton of applicants?
Um, for USC, I think it's definitely more in I guess the kind of portfolio you turned in, not in the sense of look at all these nice films I've made, all the shots have great cinematography and the editing's terrific. It's, what are you saying with the film, and are you able to communicate that effectively? Other people have told me that, and so I can't really vouch for this because I don't go there, but other people have told me that Chapman looks very technically at your projects when you're submitting. And if you already have a strong technical sense of film, then you're more likely to get accepted somewhere like Chapman. But if you have a very strong storytelling sense, then you're more likely to get accepted to USC. And it's not that technicality hurts you at USC. I just think that different film schools, I guess based on their philosophy for different things, um, and yeah, at USC specifically, they don't really look for a lot of experience. They look for, I guess, a willingness to work hard, because it's very intensive here at USC. My professor was telling us yesterday, actually, that the two most stressed out majors here at this school are med students and then film students. He said that he had sent two of his upperclassmen to the health center just to like calm down earlier that day, because it's really intense program here. They say they try to mirror the industry in a sense that when you get out there, film is such a stressful game to be in that here, for even the smallest projects, I'm shooting one this Saturday, and I didn't have the script. I mean, I'm still working on the script, but the project wasn't really assigned until this Monday. And so over the course of this week, I've got to balance my classes as well as gathering permits for all of that. We have these things called hazardous shooting forms, which basically you have to get approved by each department, your professors, the head of physical production, to permit you to make this film. And so there's a lot of different channels you have to go through. You have to get it signed off by the head of police here, the fire department if you're doing anything involving fog machines or anything like that. So I think they really look for people who are going to commit to something like that, because as with each semester, more and more people are dropping out of our program.
Yeah, what is the dropout rate?
I don't know what the exact dropout rate is,
And
because
why do they drop out?
I think it just gets too intense for people to handle. Apparently most students drop out, if they're going to drop out, the first semester of junior year, because you're shooting every weekend, either for your project or for a classmate's project that you're assigned to help out on. So it's super intense. You're doing. They set a max at 12 hours per shoot day, but a lot of the productions run over to 14, 15-hour days, and the school just doesn't know, but it's the only way you can get them shot. And so it just gets so intense, I guess, that people, say it's not worth it at that point. So I guess you really have to love being on set and making films to stick with it in this program.
Well, that leads to my next question is, what advice would you give? I've got seniors, juniors, and sophomores here. So let's talk about our seniors. These are the ones that are wanting to get into film school right now. What advice would you give them right now?
Let's see. It's almost November, so I guess you guys are already working on your applications. List everything that you've ever done. I think that would be the main thing. It's just as far as film, as far as other activities you've done to show that you can work as part of a team. If you did Skills USA or something like that, or any kind of clubs really in high school. Try to put those on your application. I don't know if you have to make a personal statement or anything. For my specific application, I had to get, I think, 3 recommendation letters, 2 from teachers and 1 from a person who works in the film industry. Uh, so I got those. I listed every internship I had ever done, every extracurricular I had ever been a part of. My personal statement was I worked on that for like a month, just tweaking it, trying to, I guess, figure out what exactly they would want from me, and then I think I just ended up on something that was about how I used to do like little plays with my brother when we were really young, and so I kind of, my through line was that I love to tell stories. So I guess just make it clear on your application who you are as a person, because film school, as much as it is technical, I think it really is an art school kind of thing. Especially here, we learn a lot about art and about exploring ourselves and putting ourself in our films. So I guess really just give them a sense of who you are and how involved you can be.
We got a question from a student. Um, what core classes do you have to take in order to start the actual film program?
So here you start taking film classes right away. I had the advantage of taking a lot of AP classes in high school. Which is another thing I guess I should mention. Uh, as far as at least this film school, your grades don't matter as much as you might be afraid of. I almost didn't apply to this school because I don't have the grades to get into USC, or I didn't. Um, USC is such a prestigious university that I was looking at their general accepted GPAs and their SAT scores, and I was nowhere near there. And so I thought there was just no way I was going to get in. Turns out I got in, and all the other film students also said they almost didn't submit because their grades weren't near USC's capacity. So I guess before I skip forward, don't be afraid to not apply to a film school just because your grades not be where they should be for that school. Because at least here, there's a lot of leeway for the film students at least to put us in. What was the question the student had again?
What core classes do you have to take? I guess
Sorry, what?
you're taking your basic core classes.
Oh, right. So yeah, I had a lot of AP credits from high school, so I maybe checked 4 classes off instantly. But there are at least here six categories of general education classes, and you have to take 2 in some categories. So I guess it comes out to about 8 classes, and you take them simultaneously to when you start taking the film classes. So the first class we took here, our first semester, that was a film class, was called Intro to Cinema. And it's just basically this critical studies class. We have film production, screenwriting, critical studies, and then some interactive animation stuff. And critical studies really gets involved with every kind of major that doesn't include theirs. So we have to take a certain number of critical studies classes. So we started out taking a lot of those. We didn't really get to make any films until our second semester last year, and even then they don't give you cameras or anything. We like, I know some film schools, like I think Chapman gives you a camera on day 1, but here I guess they wanted to kind of move you into the world of movies first. So the second semester of freshman year, we had a really fun class where it was just, they would give you very prompts, and you would make films I think every 3 weeks, and then watch them in class. And they since they didn't give you any equipment, you either used what equipment you came to school with, which I happen to have a decent amount of gear before I came, but some people had nothing but their iPhone. So a lot of people are making films on their iPhones, which was just, it's very cool to see what kind of stories people can pull off with nothing. And I think that was the idea they were trying to get across. So I'm still taking 1 GE this semester, and it's my first semester of sophomore year. GE is general education class. And it's a literature class. Last semester I took a biology class. I took a class on meditation, which counted as a social studies type class. So there's some cool options. So I guess I probably took a total of 5, but I know some people are taking all 8.
Okay.
So I'll be done after this semester. Some people are still taking them in the next semester, but we're just taking them simultaneously. We didn't have to take them first.
Well, I've got a load of students here. We've got a ton of gear. The one thing that I'm not seeing is I'm not seeing storytelling. Can you talk a little bit about what makes a good story, or what should my students be doing in order to make a movie or make a short story?
Right. So a lot of people get caught up on, I guess, gear and does the shot look terrific, or um, how can I make this look like a movie? Is I feel like what a lot of people get caught up in. But story is really just something that captivates you. I think that reading short stories, if you want to make short films, reading short stories and seeing how the author can pull you in from the very beginning and keep you with the character or the events of the piece through to the end, really helps to kind of help realize what makes a good story, because stories come from yourself more than anything. That's something they talk about a lot here. I've taken one screenwriting class so far, and it really talks about how you can delve into yourself and pull out the best stories. So if you watch movies and you want to try to replicate shots from them, that's not really, that helps you technically. But in terms of writing stories and telling stories, there's no better way to do it than to just kind of forget however you can, whatever kind of gear you have, and just, whip out your iPhone and, start looking at people around the world. Airports are awesome to just watch people. Everybody has these different stories that you kind of just see based on what they're doing, and I feel like if you just pull inspiration from that and practice writing, practice just thinking, meditation is a really good way to reflect on life and sit back and kind of think about how the world works and why you get captivated by certain things. And if you can pull that into your films, I feel like it helps a lot more than being able to pull off, a really nice dolly shot. Because, dolly shots, we're going to learn how to use a dolly next year here. But the best movies that are coming out right now aren't the ones with the cool styles and the cool shots. They're the ones that have really captivating stories.
You had mentioned earlier in your interview that they gave you prompts. Could you give me an example of a prompt that they gave you?
Sure. One was recontextualization, which was to take existing elements from media or films or books and combine them into something new. So the film that I made for that was about this guy who was tied up hostage in this lady's house, and he had wronged her in some sort of relationship. It doesn't really explain it, but then she injects him with this thing in his head, and it ends up taking him through all these different movies and time periods, and so we put him tied up on train tracks, like in The Perils of Pauline. He ends up like walking through New York while King Kong is on the building, and so we kind of went that route with it. Oh, he ends up at a Creedence Clearwater Revival concert. So just we kind of had fun with how can we recontextualize the stuff to tell a new story. Some people ended up just kind of putting a montage of films together, um, and it didn't really say anything, which I think goes back to telling a story. The best films that came out of that were those who took the prompts and really kind of put a spin on them to figure out how they could tell the best story. Some of the other prompts were activism. You just had to say something with your film.
Okay.
So me and my team, we made a film about domestic violence. And so there are a few different things. There was one that was trying to. There was one called Perspective, where you just had to shoot something from a new kind of perspective that you hadn't really seen before in
Okay.
films. So that gave some really cool, different kind of ideas. And yeah, so there were just a few things that I think were some cool prompts last year. This year we don't even have prompts, which I kind of miss the prompts, just because when you have to sit down and write a story, with no prompt, it can be kind of daunting to figure out, you know.
Where
Uh,
do you? All right. Well, let's go into the story. Where do you get your ideas for the story? And do you come up with the conflict first? Do you come up with? Uh, I'll give you an example. I get probably 10 pitches a month from students, and they start off with this whole elaborate thing. Okay, there's these two guys, and they're walking down this hall, and it's like, okay, well, uh, why are they walking down the hall? I don't know. They're just walking down the hall. Or this video, it's got to be shot in Pittsburgh. Why does it have to be shot in Pittsburgh? I don't know. I just studied Pittsburgh, and I think it's a cool city. So what's the best advice you can give a teacher to push my students to start telling stories?
um, that's tough because I think the thing that I still struggle with the most is getting an idea, an initial idea to tell a story. And if anything I've learned that works for me is, I guess, just I like to go to a random spot uh, around campus or around LA where I live. There's a lot of nice places you can just go and sit and watch people. And either just sitting with listening to some kind of song that kind of, if I have an idea for a tone or story I want to tell, normally I come up with the genre first. That is, I do kind of just pick a genre and go from there. If I want to make a comedy, then I'll just, you know, I'll start thinking of funny ideas, walking around the city. That's the thing for me. If I'm sitting at a desk, I can't come up with anything worthwhile. But if I'm kind of walking and stimulating my mind, I guess, is what's happening. If I'm just kind of venturing around the city, I think it normally I'll find something interesting from there. It's very hard to explain. I think David Lynch said it. He said something like, you have to catch the stories. That you can't create the story. The stories are just going to come at you, and you have to figure out how to harness, how to catch them.
So you come up
So
with the genre first?
Yeah, because normally I feel like that's a good way to kind of focus my attention on one end of the spectrum. If I'm gonna make a genre, if I'm gonna make a drama, you know, I won't probably be thinking of funny things. I'll probably think of something that I want to say, something that I'm passionate about. But if I want to write a comedy, I might just think of that might come off of one joke I thought was funny,
Okay.
and then figure out how to craft that into something meaningful. But whatever it is, I feel like everything in the story should be there for a reason. You know, there's two guys walking down a hallway, but you don't know why. You know, there's no point to it. If they're walking down a hallway, you know, where are they going down this hallway? I feel like you need to kind of relate everything to a central theme, and that'll focus the story more than just, you know, just throwing stuff that they're for the sake of it being there. Did that kind of answer the question?
It does. It does. It helps me a lot. We got a question. What is your ultimate goal? What do you picture yourself doing after you get out of this thing called film school?
I don't know. That's People ask me that all the time. I ask other students that all the time. None of us really have a clear idea because the industry is it changes so fast. So we have this, like we're building a VR, or not we, but the school is building a VR building now that's just devoted to VR. So that makes us wonder, you know, are we gonna have to figure out how to do VR in the industry 3 years from now when we're going into it? How big of a thing is virtual reality going to be? Do we have to tell stories through that, or can we tell stories conventionally? Should we be focusing on web shows or that kind of thing? So it's really kind of all up in the air right now. Like I was just talking to my mom the other day about how when I was coming to film school, I thought there was no way I was going to grad school. That I was just going to be here for my 4 years, get my bachelor's degree, and then jump into the industry. And now I'm not so sure. Now I might go to grad school here, I might go to grad school at AFI, or I might not go at all. I think I won't be able to really decide until my senior year when I kind of figure out what my options are. Ultimately, like if it were up to me, I would want to be a studio director, I think. Just because I think that's where more of those are the kind of films I like. I like studio movies. A lot of people here want to be indie filmmakers. So I think I want to be a director just because I feel like that's the part of the process that I'm best at. I'm not the best cinematographer here, I'm not the best editor here, but I feel like directing is something I kind of understand more than the other parts of it. So I want to be a director. How I'll get there, I'm not entirely sure yet. Just kind of figuring that as I go along.
Um, who inspires you?
A lot of people. Um, there's a lot of professors that I've met here that inspire me more than any filmmaker on the red carpet has ever inspired me. So I mean, some of my favorite directors are I love Paul Thomas Anderson. Uh, I love Quentin Tarantino, which everybody does. I love J.J. Abrams actually, which a lot of people here don't even agree with me on. So I can look up to directors like that, but then also on a more, I guess, introspective level, there are professors who I've met here at the school who, when you talk to them, it just feels like you're talking, I guess, to another version of yourself that has made it in the industry. And so I think like one of my biggest inspirations would be a professor I had here the second semester of my first year. And he's an indie filmmaker. He's never really made a film that's been nowhere near J.J. Abrams or Quentin Tarantino. But just hearing him, I guess, talk about his process and how it relates to mine, and seeing that, this kind of thing does work to kind of get you in the door and to make films. It's just really inspiring, I guess, to see someone following their art. And yeah, so I think just those people. And then one of my biggest inspirations is my dad, just because he's done nothing in film, but he works so hard. And so I guess when I start to get bogged down by the stresses of being in film school and all that, I call him, and he talks about all these stresses he has that has nothing to relate to mine, because he just has a small business in Atlanta. But I guess just relating to the amount of stress that both of us are under, it kind of that inspires me a lot to keep pushing and keep going. And ultimately, I know that wherever I need to end up, I will.
Um, and we got a question. What's the pro and con versus obviously a few weeks ago we met somebody from Chapman Film, and of course USC Film name came up. What's the pros and cons Chapman versus USC? Because it seems like you guys are always being talked about.
Chapman, I when I came here to tour USC about 2 years ago, I hadn't even really looked at Chapman, but I worked for this guy who is a film composer in Hollywood. He's done a lot of big movies, and I knew him from a production I worked on in Atlanta. And so I met with him and told him I was going to tour USC tomorrow, and he said, have you looked at Chapman? And I said I have. I wasn't really too interested in it. And he happened to know a guy at Chapman because he talks there sometimes, and so he set me up a tour right there, a private tour. So the next morning I went down to Chapman and got a tour of their facilities, and instantly I fell in love with Chapman. It was, because it was kind of like walking through their studio spaces and their editing bays and everything before the school had opened for the day. So I guess seeing everything up close, they have a lot of great spaces and a lot of great systems and post-production facilities, and they put out really good DPs is something that Chapman is really good at. They've got some great DPs graduating from there. And then when I saw USC, I hated the tour, actually. They didn't show us really anything. They showed us some statues they have of their founders, kind of walked us around the courtyard outside the film school, because the film school here is very, picture perfect in terms of being pretty buildings. And so they showed them to us and then said, all right, that's it. So pick USC. And it wasn't really until I kind of looked inside I would Google, current blogs from Chapman students and USC students. And I can't remember the exact Chapman blog that I found, but it was just someone kind of talking about their experience there at Chapman. And I thought it was really cool that they got to use cameras from day one and kind of start practicing their filmmaking from that point. And then I saw someone from USC's blog, and I ended up actually meeting that person and working on her set after I got here. But seeing her talk about how the USC experience was so different, I think it really depends on personal preference. USC is very focused on storytelling and really getting that skill ingrained in you before you make films. And Chapman, I think, doesn't waste any time with jumping into the technical side of things. You start to learn from day one how to work with a camera, how to get good shots, how to light scenes. And USC holds off on that until you have become very familiar with the language of film and had a good amount of critical studies classes under your belt. So I guess it's just a totally different kind of learning process between the two schools.
Got it. We got another question here. How many female filmmakers do you see on campus?
How many what filmmakers?
Female. Women.
Female?
Yes.
Oh, there are a lot of female filmmakers here. A lot. I think USC probably tries to make it that way, because they say there are far more male applicants, but there are probably about half. Half might be not right, but it's near half the amount of males as there are females here in the film school. And there's councils, diversity councils that try to keep the film school as equal opportunity as it can be. So there are a lot of ethnicities, a lot of males and females here that I think keep things pretty. They keep the playing ground pretty level, and I think that's a great thing because you see a lot of interesting stories told from different perspectives, and that's really interesting to me. And so yeah, I would say about near half our class are females. There might be slightly more males, but near half are female.
Excellent. And film school, was it what you thought it was going to be? Is it better than, or is it less than what you thought it would be?
I think what I thought it would be was very technical. I thought it would be, this is how you set up a C-stand, this is how you light a scene, this is how you shoot a conversation, that kind of stuff. It's not like that at all, or at least not yet. Right now it's the biggest feedback we get about all of our films have to do with story. And so that might be, a different experience at Chapman, but here at least it's this shot wasn't necessary for your story. This line really threw me off. This scene you should have lost because it took away from the central focus of the film. So that's different in the aspect I thought it would. The ability to work with other people was more than I expected. That's probably my favorite part about the school is we have a crew pool that you put your information in, and then the upperclassmen will send out emails to the people in the crew pool. So if you put in the pool that you're experienced in lighting or anything like that, you'll get emails from upperclassmen who will invite you to come work with them or connect you to or the school will connect you with internships, studios. So you get a big opportunity to work with other people, and collaboration I think is something that I didn't realize would be so prevalent.
Excellent. So we've got some young filmmakers here. We're struggling with getting the story. Should I be looking in our English department for the story?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
I think, literature helps a lot.
Okay, and we're getting ready to close this out. Any last bits of advice that you would give our students?
Keep making films. Always write a ton of scripts, make a ton of movies, make a ton of bad movies, because you're going to make 100 bad movies before you make a good one. We're all still making our bad movies here at film school, that's the point. So just keep going. If someone tells you your movie's bad, that's great. Listen to why it was bad, fix those, and just keep going over and over and over until you make a good one.
Excellent. All right, Zach. It has been a great pleasure. Um, so I want to thank you for joining us. And if you know any other filmmakers that would like to kind of pitch in, even seniors, that would help us immensely.
Sure.
And what we're trying to do is inspire our young filmmakers to be where you are in just a couple of years.
Cool.
All right. Please stay in touch. Thanks so much,
Sure,
Zach.
will do.
Take care.
Thanks. You too.
Bye bye.
All right.
Sorry about that.
Did you need us
Um,
quickly before we go to class?